Hi everyone, Angus Campbell here. Wednesday the 2nd of October. And you're probably thinking, what's going on? The bottom's been built up into the crankcases. And indeed, that's what I've been doing over the last couple of days since the wet weekend at Cadwell last weekend. And the problem is that it's all got to come apart again because the cam is just so tight. It will turn. In fact, yeah, it will just turn. It's so tight. Something is wrong there, and I'm also afraid that with it being that tight, it's going to damage the timed breather shuttle valve at the opposite end of the pinion. So this is going to be stripped down again, but in the meantime, while I'm doing that, here's a quick time lapse of what I've been doing over the last couple of days. About an hour compressed into 3 minutes, just to show you the sequence of events, and we're going to be doing all this again, so I'll go through it more slowly, step by step, once we're in a position to build this up, once we've identified the issue with the cam. So here's the quick time lapse of the last couple of days. Okay, so that's brought you up to date. So what we'll do now is undo the few bolts at the front of the crankcase, obviously the nut in the centre casting here, and then the nuts around the back here, and we'll split these cases, and then we'll put the cases back together, but just with the cam, and we'll just try and identify where the problem is. We might need to shave a bit off the thrust bearing, but why it's tight now when we've got the same cam in the same cases, I'm just wondering if a bearing has moved when we heated the cases up to change the main bearing. So let's see. Okay, that's everything apart then, cases apart, crank out, cam is still in the right hand case. So now I'm going to put the cases together just with the cam and just with a bolt at the front and a nut on a stud at the back, just to see if we can identify what's binding with respect to this cam, and without the shuttle valve in it as well, and that will then enable us to determine if there's a ton of pressure on the shuttle valve or whether the pressure is against one of the thrust faces. I can already see, I think, that in this left hand case here, which is the one that we did heat up to put a new main bearing in, the bush in which the cam runs, which isn't a thrust face, it is slightly proud, and I'm just wondering if that has indeed just moved out a little when the cases were hot, because we did turn these cases upside down to get the outer race of the main bearing out, and so this bush might have just moved. So anyway, we should be able to determine that by say just putting the cases back together with just the cam in and without the shuttle valve. So let's do that now. Cam in, cases together. It's as tight as hell. So it wasn't the pressure on the shuttle valve causing that. So we'll just loosen the cases off a little and part them, and just to see if that cam loosens off. Okay, so cases apart again, and firstly just checking how the cam runs just in this bush with the cases apart, and it's beautiful, lovely and smooth, no problem at all with that. So we'll take the pinion gear off this side, pull the cam out and see how it runs in the bush in the opposite side, see how much leeway we've got there for the shuttle valve. Okay, cam out and in the other side, and again that runs well in that bearing. So let's put the shuttle valve in. And see how much we've got to play with. Shuttle valve, then it's spring. Make sure the spring is seated properly flat, because that can be a problem too. Just grab a torch and make sure that's in properly. Yes, it is. Make sure the slot in the cam, there it goes, lines up right. I think I can see one of our problems. So the cam still moves nicely in that bearing with the shuttle valve in. There's plenty of spring there, but it's not seating properly. Well, not seating properly. It's the cam doesn't appear to be able to appears to be sort of push all the way in to still leave a little tiny bit of float. Having said that, when we put the cases together with the cam in without the shuttle valve, then it was still tight. I've still got the feeling that this bush here has moved slightly, because it is now sitting slightly proud of the case, and that's not a thrust face. Also, it means that the shuttle valve in its spring doesn't have as much room as it should have, and you've got quite a big ridge there. So I think the first port of call is going to be to reheat this case tomorrow, and we'll see if we can reseat that bush. Then what we might have to do is slightly reamer this out again, but I think that's going to be the first move. Let's just get that shuttle valve out again. Firstly the spring, there she is, and then the valve itself. Here she comes. There she is. What I'm looking at, sorry about the pause, is something that you can't see. Is that this is a sort of a blind-ended bush with two holes which act as the breather, and the shuttle valve sits in this. So obviously, if this bush is too proud, also means the shuttle valve is pushed tighter against the cam, which will give it less room to move, and we might be just clamping that up a bit, which isn't going to help. I'm just seeing as well if there's any aberration in there that we might have missed. There is an oil hole at one end, and actually that is lined up well with that. Let's get the straight picker. Yeah, there is a slight edge to the oil way, so that might have moved out slightly. Oh. Actually, I found something else. Sorry, I know you can't see any of this, but I found something else. Oh, that's the pin. there's a locating pin to stop the valve rotating at the other end. Right, yeah, I think the next move definitely is to try and reseat that bush. Let's have another look at giving this cam a good oiling. And see what happens when we put this together with the cam in, but without the timing pinion or the woodruff key in at the far end here, just so we can see how much play, side to side play and movement we've got in that cam. It's definitely not bent. Right, let's give this plenty of oil. The other thing is we might just have to dress this bearing very, very slightly. And originally it would have been reamered with the cases in position. No, still tight. Not too bad though. I don't think it's much, but yeah, definitely going to have a go at that bearing. And that can wait until tomorrow, so we'll leave that overnight for now and I'll bring you back in the morning. Right, ladies and gentlemen, next morning, and it looks like a bomb's dropped in here. But overnight I had another think about this, tried to make any further observations, done some research online and checked the workshop manual, and I've come to the conclusion that I think I need to invest in a Reamer, because as we're at this stage we may as well do it properly, make sure everything's correct, And no matter what we do, even to the extent of some suggestions where placing the barrel on and tightening that down might just bring the cases slightly more into line, hasn't worked either. So that camshaft is still very tight once the cases are bolted up. Initially, when there's a slight gap, it's fine, but once bolted up, it's not right. So we'll do it properly and check it with the proper Reamer. So I've got one on the way, and that'll be here in a few days' time. So what we'll do is I'll just show you a quick still of that, and then we'll close this episode down, and we'll wait for the tools to come before we crack on. But there's no point at this stage in trying to get by with any half measures and just assume that cam's going to run in, because it's so tight that something is going to get damaged, and we might run the risk of damaging the pinions, which would be catastrophic. So let's do it properly. Okay, so here's the camshaft reaming kit that I've ordered, and that's now on its way, and it'll be here in 2 or 3 days. And it's similar to the original Triumph one, but not quite the same, but specially made for the parts. So 13/16 and 7/8. So we'll wait for that to arrive, and we'll take it from there and do it properly. So thanks very much in the meantime for watching, everybody, and see you again soon in the next episode as soon as that tool arrives. Thanks again. Bye-bye.